I keep seeing the same thing. The partners pulling ahead in the AI shift are not the ones with the fanciest AI tools. They win on the part of the job AI can't touch. Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to the Paul Higgins podcast. And in this podcast, I talk to Sarah McDevitt from HubSpot. You will learn the 5 signals of rational intelligence and how each shows up for a SaaS partner. Second, why the retainer opportunity is finally alive in not just the HubSpot ecosystem, but in the SaaS ecosystem you're in. And finally, the big change that's coming when clients implode on badly built AI, vibe coding. You've probably come across it. So, who's Sarah? Sarah is the Senior Director of Partner Strategy at HubSpot. She was actually on episode 642, so she's a repeat guest. She just released her first book, and hopefully not her last, The Round Table, How Rational Intelligence Will Become Your Human Advantage in the AI Age. This is the second time, as I said, that she's been on the show, and she was even better the second time round. I'll hand you over to Sarah from HubSpot. Great to have you here again, Sarah.
Thanks, Paul, for having me back again.
Well, you must be great because I haven't had too many repeat guests. So you were on 642, and in that we sort of talked about growth and how, you're not someone that's just doing implementation or selling licenses. You're there to advise the customer on how to grow the business. Since then, what has sort of played out? And sorry, we talked about data and AI as well. Let's not forget that. What's sort of played out since then to be true, and what's maybe changed a little since we last spoke?
Well, it's interesting. AI is still so new to so many people, but AI has evolved in the last 6 months. And I think, like, before we were talking about AI in a very broad sense, I think now the conversation is more focused on the action elements of AI and what agents can actually do for you. I think before we were talking about a much broader AI picture. And now, as we move to more of that action layer, I think it's reinforcing many of the things we were talking about before. The action has to deliver an outcome. It's not an action for an action's sake. And I think, one of the things that will make AI successful for customers is where they're seeing that closed loop, where they're seeing where the AI can understand their business, build context, and then deliver action that actually is meaningful and returns real ROI for their business rather than just a nice, "Oh, look what that does, isn't that magical?" I think when it actually starts doing taking some real work off people's hands, that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I talk to partners every day and say, "Hey, how are you using AI?" And straight away they'll talk about the developments, the difference between the platform and what's really true and possible and all that. I'm saying, okay, that's great, but how have you used it to grow more revenue? They just look at me blankly. I'm like, well, what are you doing to drive more? You love working with customers, but how are you getting more customers? And that one I think is still got to evolve. It's still too much, as I say, moving the menus in the restaurant rather than trying to get more people into the restaurant to have the meal. So that needs to evolve. And I think agents is still, I think we'll talk about this as in a moment, but I think that's the pathway to do it, right? And I think that whole owning your own data, which you talked about how important data was the last time, I think that's even more true now because once it becomes, like you said, rather than generic, it becomes more and more specific for you. It's like, well, how do you structure that data so that the agents can actually do the right job, right? But I know you've been really busy because you actually wrote a book. And I forgot to ask in the prep, but is this your first book?
It is my first book
Correct.
because,
Well, what's
yeah,
the
yeah.
question people normally ask after that?
Will there be another one?
Yeah, is it your last book?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting process writing a book. You've been through it yourself. Like, listen, my honest belief is we all have a book in us, right? If we think about it, we all have a book. Everyone has a life story that's interesting. If you look at it from the right angle, or they have something to say. The book was really, I suppose, an accident in many ways. I didn't really intend to write the book, but as I started to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, and I wanted to spread that message, people kept asking me, where can I learn more? And there was nowhere to learn more And so eventually I was like, well, maybe enough people are asking that this is worth me actually thinking about this and fleshing it out. So in the evenings, and after the kids went to bed and I started to think about it and started to really, I suppose, understand how relational intelligence, which is the topic of the book, has played out in my own life. Who taught me about relationships? How has that shaped my career and the way I walk through life? And so the book kind of, I suppose, organically evolved from one idea to ended up maybe somewhere a little bit different where people thought it would go, including myself, I have to admit. But it's been a fantastic experience for sure.
Yeah, and if we talk about AI, I think in the book you talk about how you wrote it by talking and then, edit. So it's your words put into text. And
Mhm.
when I wrote mine, it was very similar. I just had someone interview me each week, and then they
Yeah.
were turned in and I edited. And I think, that's the great thing now is, one of the benefits of AI is that you can do that. You can talk and then it can turn into multi formats for other
Mhm.
people then to learn from you. So well done. It is called the Round Table. We'll have the link, etc., in the show notes we'll talk about. But what's your definition of relational intelligence?
Yeah, so relational intelligence for me is the ability to build, sustain, and grow trust-based relationships that I believe AI can't replicate. And that's my definition of what relational intelligence is. Now, many people, and we talked about this a little bit before, Paul, there would be generations of grannies and granddads who will know what relational intelligence is because they will have run farms, they will have run shops, they will have interacted with their neighbors. They will have been involved in cooperatives. And in that, they will have had interaction with people and they will have understood all of the things it takes to have very strong relationships. But we, I think, generationally have lost some of that. And so, really, what I'm trying to do in the book is to, everyone's saying humans are important in the AI term. Everyone says that. But it's kind of like this intangible idea up here that humans are important, but why are they important? And like, what do we need to be important? And like, the people are looking for something to latch on to. And so, what I've tried to do is give them 5 practical, what I call signals
Yes.
of what they need to focus on if they want to strengthen their relational intelligence, to grow relational intelligence, which I think it can be grown,
Yes.
and more than anything, be aware of the power of relational intelligence. Because I think people can sometimes dismiss the idea that relationships matter and human interactions matter. They can pick efficiency over inefficiency, which often comes with humans, I will say. But in that efficiency, there is a lot of value that compounds over time. And so the 5 signals are really about trying to teach people what do they need to focus on and how they can be successful.
Yeah, great. Well, I know they're awareness, presence, empathetic, structuring, connection capital,
Hmm.
and I can't even read my own handwriting here. What's the last one? Human difference, is it? Is that right?
Yeah, human differentiation. Um,
Differentiation. There we go. So
exactly.
just to show, you and the viewers that I did do a little bit of homework. I'm not completely freewheeling here, but take us through an example of each of the 5 in the context of a SaaS partner, whether it's a HubSpot partner, you
Yeah,
insert the ecosystem you're in at the moment, but just take us
yeah.
through each of the 5 in that context.
Awareness, I think is a pretty universal one. It's the ability really to read the tone, the timing, and the subtext of your interactions with other humans.
Yes.
And so like for the cheat sheet, I call it reading the room.
Yes.
Now we all know people who read the room well, and we know people who don't read the room well.
Yes.
My personal view is reading the room or your inability to do it is not a lack of talent, it's a lack of being aware. Once we start to notice things, we start to pick up on things. But, the example I always give is we've all been in situations in business where we're in a room and nothing is said, there's no words exchanged, but maybe someone exhales or maybe someone raises an eyebrow and all of the energy gets sucked out of the room. Like it just leaves. And that's a feeling that I don't think AI will ever be able to capture because you know that feeling. It's the same feeling when your heart just sinks in your chest. And from a partner or any business context, really, that would be the decision between you kind of going to yourself, now is not a great time for me to push forward with this sale.
Yes.
It will not be received with open arms. This
Yeah.
is not the moment for me to point that out. It's a moment for me to maybe take a step back, call for a break and try and figure out what happened. Or, maybe it's that someone at the back of the room is not sure about your plan. And even that awareness of going, John doesn't seem sure. John's probably going to block it down the road. So
Yes.
I need to pause here and I need to connect with John, figure out what his hesitation is and make sure I get him on side before he proceeds. So that would be an example of awareness, which is just the ability to, the Irish people are great at this, it's really reading for the things that are not being said.
Yes. Yes.
Or sometimes, things are being said and they are not what they mean. Like I always say that Irish people have this saying, "Oh, I will, yeah," which means I absolutely will not.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that kind of awareness that you need to have in reading a room to figure out, is it the right time to push forward with your proposal, your sale, your suggestion, whatever it is. And many things fall foul of that because people don't take the time to go, now was not a good time. So that's awareness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the great thing is we've got video and we're using video like we've never done before, but often that people still rely so much on text. It's
Mm,
a bit of an outside the industry example, but I'm a member of a golf club. I love golf, and they made a major decision. They sent it on a Friday night in text. I'm like, where's the chairperson giving a video for this?
hmm
It would have taken them 3 minutes to give a video so we could actually see that they cared about us as members, given it's such as
hmm
all of that context was completely lost, right? So I think often what we do is, you can tell when someone sent you an AI message and you're sending one back and it's just AI,
Yeah,
paddleball or, what's the game? Pickleball. Everyone's playing pickleball
pickleball.
these
Yeah,
days. Yeah.
yeah.
It's pickleball, right? How do you break that up with audio or video to read those nuances, the roll of the eyes, the look down, all of those things that you said that only
Yeah.
humans can detect? And yeah, I think that's great. Next, we go on to presence. So, what's an example of presence?
Presence for me is one of the signals actually that is the most impacted in a positive way by AI, right? Because, we all enter meetings nowadays and there's more note takers in there than there is humans.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that because as someone who is not the best speller in the world, and if I was attempting to try and take notes, I would be listening to what people are saying.
Yes.
So I think, presence is being fully there even digitally. So it
Yes.
does mean putting away distractions. Like
Yes.
it does, I'm guilty of it sometimes, but it's kind of irritating at a moment of, a deep relationship moment where someone is doing something else. They're not fully engaged with you. I think the note takers give you the ability to go really deep with someone, to ask questions, to not worry about, oh, I want to want to make sure I don't forget that. I think presence is just really focusing on the person you're talking to. And for me, it's about making the person feel not just seen and heard, but like truly acknowledged, like
Yes.
truly that you are looking them in the eye, you were listening, you're saying, "Oh, you said that. That's interesting. What were you thinking here?" It's also like one of the best ways to be what I call a context miner,
Yes.
because the more you can go deep with someone, the more context you can extract. And from a consultant's point of view, it's one of the things that strengthens your AI outputs is if you're able to extract like how the way decisions are made within a business, so you can add that context into how the agent operates. Presence really gives you that superpower if you're willing to show up, take the time, have that conversation. Because you know yourself as well, when things go wrong, sometimes and you're asking someone else, well, what did they say and what happened? And when people aren't paying full attention to those things as well, and they're not like really leaning into being present, you miss important signals. So I think that's key.
And it sort of relates to your awareness is the conversations, like you said, there's normally two conversations. There's the conversation said in public, and then there's often the real conversation, right? And
hmm
it's how do you get to those real conversations? So, like the text and the AI just won't pick up those real conversations. So if someone did raise their eyes at a point or whatever, you can make note of that
hmm
and follow up to find out why that's the case rather than try and, like you said, take notes on what are the tech specs so that you can go into an SOW on it, right? So I think
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great that we've got that ability now with the note takers. I still got to find out
And I,
how.
and I
Go for
think
it.
as well, Paul, the thing I'd say about the kind of surround sound about AI for me is, AI can make your skills less scarce without making you less useful. And a
Yes.
lot of people do not understand that because what's useful about you is those moments of connection where, it is still humans making those decisions at the top of the chain. We haven't reached the Terminator level yet. So people really need to understand that things being less scarce in terms of skills does not make them less useful. Like that's so important for people to understand.
Yeah, great point. So the third one is empathetic structuring. What do you mean?
Yes,
Give
this
us
is
an
where this
example
is
of that.
where we get yeah, this is where we get a little bit more I would say people go, empathetic structuring, what is this? So, I talk about this in the book a little bit where I observed this early on was when I was doing charity work in Kenya, actually. And it was in a children's youth and resource center. And what I thought was really interesting is they had a way of being clear about what the rules were and the structure of how it worked, but also there being an exchange of caring and food and safety and all those things.
Yes.
But it meant that we all need to be accountable. Now, in a business sense, the way this shows up for me is when we think about AI, if AI makes a mistake, AI is not lying at home in bed going, I feel terrible about that. I'm going to make that right. So, empathetic structuring is building care and accountability into the way we work together, right? So it's about making sure that people are accountable to each other and that we balance, that care that we give with, the good support for people. So, an example for again, if you're and something I'm seeing actually, Paul, to be honest with you, is people still want a human to kind of grab by the scruff of the neck if things don't go well, right? They
Yeah.
need accountability because in a world with AI where the AI doesn't care, the loss of accountability is scary because you're going, well, no one's going to care. The AI won't care. Like, so I need to make sure someone cares. Now,
Yes.
if a human makes a mistake, that human is definitely lying in bed going, how can I make this right?
Yes.
And so accountability and human accountability, it's going to be an important offering in the future, definitely, where people feel like, yes, someone is going to feel bad about this. The AI won't do that. And I think humans that understand that very quickly understand that there is value in human relationships. So empathetic structuring really just, in summary, is it's building care and boundaries into the way we work together. Besides the fact that we're both still human, we
Yes.
need to have some structure. So it's, feedback loops. It's making sure that when we give feedback, it is structured in a way that can be actioned upon. So that's what the empathetic structuring side of things is.
Yeah, fantastic. So the next is the connection capital. What do you mean? Give
Yes,
us an example of
yes.
that.
So connection capital is really building relationships that compound in value over time. And so again, this falls into the category of many consultants would be like, we know this, Sarah. We know this, right?
Yes.
But sometimes what I see from a sales point of view, I will say with some partners or some salespeople or whatever, is they tether themselves to a POC that's tenuous, right? And so they have this great relationship with one POC in a company. But then the bad news comes. The POC is moving on.
Yes.
And it seems like all is lost because you didn't have a deep enough rooted connection with that organization beyond that one person. So connection capital means being like really thoughtful about mapping out internal stakeholders within a business, making sure you understand, everyone's roles, responsibilities, the dynamics, that you don't just focus on one connection, but that you spread much, further beyond that. But it's also, connection capital is one of the ones that actually can be measured quite easily from a KPI point of view based on things like referrals.
Yes.
Because if you have someone within an organization who is a champion of yours, that you spend the time, I always give the example of it's also about giving them things that is beyond your contractual obligations.
Yes.
So whether it's some people would probably challenge me on this, but I think it's still very relevant. Where you maybe work for a particular company and you see an article about, a change in regulation or the impact of AI on that industry, and you say to the customer, "Hey, I saw this and I thought of you." Right? It's not part of your contractual arrangement, But there is something nice on a human level about knowing another human was thinking about you or your business or cares enough to actually send that to you.
Yes.
So connection capital, as I said, is understanding how an organization is made up, making sure you're building connection broader than your initial point, and then giving value to that relationship beyond what is required of you.
Yeah, I think that's critical. And if you look at the example the other week where I came across something that I thought might be valuable to you in HubSpot, and now AI would never have picked that connection, right?
Mhm.
It's joining
Yeah.
the dots, as I call it, and it's always looking to join those dots with value that you just never know what's going to come back your way, and you don't know the conversations that are happening when you aren't in the room, right?
Yeah.
So look, I think that's so critical. And once again, as the AI does more of the technical stuff, you then have more space to
Mm.
do this because the CRM isn't about a data point that is fact based. It's about how do you get the data in that CRM that picks up all these nuances that you've got
Mhm.
intuitively. I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where it's got to be going. And the last one is the human differential. So, what's an example of that?
When I talk about this, I mean, a lot of people think it's humans versus the AI. I would be a firm believer that you're not competing with AI, you're competing with a human that is probably using AI. And even if we take the AI out of it, there is a difference in humans. There's average humans, there's good humans, there's great humans for loads of different reasons. And so like you have to one bring the humanity that no other human can bring. And it's also made up by your lived experience. So if me and you were in a room with, I don't know, a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old,
Yes.
maybe an 80-year-old, we were all trying to solve a problem. I can guarantee we would all come at the problem in a different way based on our lived experience.
Yes.
So the 8-year-old, I'm guessing, would have, or we would have some kind of trauma, business trauma, where, we something happened in the past and we're like, we're not doing that, or we are doing this because this worked previously. Whereas the context for a 20-year-old is a lot less. So there's huge value in lived experience, the way we approach problems, that the AI can obviously absorb a lot of people's experience, but it's the way they all interplay with each other and the way in that moment we think back to a moment where we might decide we're not going to do that because we have already seen what the cascading impact of that particular call would mean, the collateral damage, so to speak. I think humans will surprise and do surprise AI because we are unpredictable. And we've seen that with some of, the AI use cases that come out. Sometimes humans, one of my absolute favorite that I love talking about was New York City came out with a bot to help small businesses to navigate all of the city regulations. So like what they need to do from a health point of view, what they need to do from a, garbage collection point of view.
Yes.
And it was designed to help humans navigate the complexity of regulations. But the humans used it to find out how to get around the regulations. And so that, maybe wasn't something they considered, that some humans would say, this is great. They've put it on a plate for me now.
Yes.
I can figure that out. So I think that unpredictability is the thing that's really interesting about humans. And I think, as intelligence becomes, more abundant, when it comes to AI, the ability to connect with people will become more scarce, in my personal opinion, but also more valuable. And
Yes.
so I think like for businesses, they need to start building the capabilities, in humans with the same intention they have spent decades building technical skills.
Yes.
Because technical skills is something that the AI will, do quite well. And if your identity is wrapped up in a skill that can be replaced by AI, what is your identity then? Like, what is the things that you need to lean into? What do you need to kind of rediscover about yourself and your humanity?
Yes.
And so my argument is companies really need to start being intentional about this, because I talk in the book as well about, companies of the future will be people who, yes, go into AI, but they also focus on the relational intelligence, and they then have the blend of the tech plus the trust, and
Yes.
they'll get that, accelerated growth from that. Whereas, some people will lean too much into the AI. And once we all have AI, we're all the same. Like there is nothing about us that is special or unique. And if you're a consultant, you know that the reason you win business is based on who you are. it's not really when it comes down to, many years ago when I worked in agency, we had chemistry sessions because really, before anything, any pitching was done, it was like, do we like each other as humans? Like, is this vibe of reading the room between us like feel good? And so I think they're the things that we need to prepare for in the future.
Yeah, and I think, I was listening to a great podcast on the weekend about subconscious versus conscious, right? And you look at so many things you do, like driving a car, etc., like it's all subconscious, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not something that you prepared. Like so AI often gets us so prepared, right? But you'll
Hmm.
walk in a meeting and someone will say something, and all of a sudden you'll say something. You had no idea you were going to say it, but it's from your learned experience, etc. And
Hmm.
that is so valuable. And I think
Yeah.
the good thing is AI takes away a lot of the stuff that can be repeatable to leave
Hmm.
the stuff that isn't. And that's why humans are so unique. And I think the book sums it up well. And if someone's, I know you say it in the book, but if someone says how these are all soft skills, Sarah, like, oh, I'm not good at soft skills, like what's your response to that?
My response to that is that you are unwilling to explore an area that makes you feel uncomfortable because potentially it's not your strength. And we need to stop hiding behind our perceived value as humans, right? I've said this before, maybe the jobs that AI is taking weren't the jobs that got the best out of humanity to start with, And I think we need to stop going, AI is taking our jobs. We
Yes.
need to go, it's taking away the things that is what the job was.
Yeah.
And it's maybe taking away a task-driven, mundane thing. Our job is to figure out what's the next, step for humanity in terms of the jobs that need to be done.
Yes.
And even if we look at technical and digital evolution in the last couple of years, and even if we look at like the societal changes from the impact digital has had, what actually is quite attractive to people is reconnection with humans. People are lonely in spite of the fact they're so connected.
Yes.
And so we see that with, in-person events, we see the energy that it brings. I also think, people always make an argument that, oh, there's introverts and there's extroverts and there's omniverts, and they all want something different. And that's true. But introverts aren't don't they don't not want interaction with humans. They just don't maybe enjoy it in like large groups or a big space or social events.
Yes.
But any introvert I know still needs human connection and they still
Absolutely.
want to connect with the right type of humans for them. And so I think people tend to use that excuse of like, oh, well, not everyone wants that. On a very basic human level, I disagree with that very strongly. And so I say to businesses, AI has a development plan for your people. Do
Yes.
you?
Yes, yeah. A lot of partners that I talk to say, look, I don't really like sales, right?
Mm,
Like it's not me. I've never liked sales, etc. I'm like, well, take me through how you do a discovery call, right? And they go through it, or they might send me one, I'll review it, and they ask fantastic questions, right? They're a good journalist. I said, what's the difference between that skill that's human that you're doing there and finding out where someone is, where they want to go, and if you can help them
mm,
with the difference, right? Like it's not too dissimilar. And I think what I'm finding is a lot of the SaaS partners, as I call them, is your case a HubSpot partner. Like you said, as that stuff I didn't want to do disappears, right? It's then, well, what do I really want to do? And that's where you need to sharpen. That's why you need to get this book to help sharpen those things that are innately in you, but you just haven't had to do them as much
mm.
because you've been buried in code or you've been buried in AIs, APIs or what all the stuff that was so difficult to sort. Now you don't have that. And I was lucky because when I worked at Coca-Cola, our product was so simple. Sugar and water
Mm,
in a can, right? So we had to get really good at marketing and sales because it was sugar and water in a can.
mm.
Whereas if you look at a lot of you listening or watching this now with Sarah, is you've had all this technical redundancy that has sort of
Yeah.
stopped you from getting to what you want to do. So now's the time to do it. So the book's called The Round Table: How Relationship Intelligence Will Become Your Human Advantage in the Age of AI. It's Sarah's
Yeah.
first book. Let's hope the world doesn't see the last of Sarah and books. But all the links and etc. will be in the show notes. And also for the rapid fire and those other things on Sarah, you can go back to episode 642. I highly recommend that you watch or listen to that. And pardon the pun, to sort of bookend both episodes. I think they work well together. But Sarah, as always, great having you on the podcast. And I hope you can be the first third person or the person to come on 3 times.
Well, I'd be very honored, Paul, to do that. I really always appreciate our conversations.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. The one line that really stopped me in this conversation with Sarah, which was absolutely brilliant, is this: AI has a development plan for your people. Do you? The build is getting commoditized. The moat left for most SaaS partners is the part of the job the machine can't do. Start there this week. Reach out to Sarah on LinkedIn and thank her and ask questions. She'll love it. You can pick up her book, The Roundtable, on Amazon. And you can watch this episode on Paul Higgins' mentoring channel if you're not doing that already. And that's obviously on YouTube. And I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast.